October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. They deliberately targeted innocent mothers, babies, grandparents, partygoers, peace activists, and countless others who had no connection whatsoever, even to military life. These were innocent civilians living their lives until they suddenly came to an end. The attacks unleashed a carnage that is almost unprecedented in human history. In fact, what was special about these attacks is the delight and the triumphal pride and exhibitionism with which Hamas surely carried them out. All of that reminds us that Hamas is not a militant organization. It is not a government. It is not an activist group. Hamas is a sadistic, criminal, terrorist death cult, and it must be defeated. There will be and there can be no negotiating with Hamas. Hamas can only be destroyed, just like President Obama destroyed and assassinated Osama bin Laden. There was no negotiating with bin Laden, and there can be no negotiating with Hamas. And this attack was also an attack on Canadians. If I could quote my deputy leader, in the carnage, 5 Canadians were murdered. And they're not just numbers. Alexander Luke from Montreal, Ben Mizrachiov of Vancouver, both murdered when Hamas opened fire on a music festival. Shir Gregory was also killed. Adi Vital Kaplun of Ottawa was murdered in her kibbutz, and Ned Epstein was murdered as he attempted to defend his girlfriend against a grenade. They are now in our memories forever, and may their memories be a blessing. And we know why Hamas felt the need to act with such drastic cruelty at this time. Hamas, of course, is guided by its terror sponsor, the dictatorship in Tehran, which had been growing in its concern for Israel's signature of the Abraham Accords with the UAE, with Bahrain, an agreement with Sudan, and even the possibility of normalization with Saudi Arabia. This kind of peace between Muslims and Jews, between Israelis and Arabs, would be a nightmare for both Hamas and for the dictatorship in Iran, who seek to perpetuate the conflict and the divisions as a source of power. They need to perpetuate the hatred in order to justify their dictatorships. And that's why they felt the need to interrupt any path towards peace. Here in Canada, we judge people on their own merits, their own deeds, and their own words. That is why the great Canadian Prime Minister Wilfrid Laurier said when he was asked, "What is our nationality?" he did not list an ethnicity or a religion or any other superficial demarcation. Back then, we were already mixed up. We had, obviously, Indigenous people, Scots, Irish, and many people from all around the world in our country. And therefore, we could not define ourselves on any of those lines. So he said, Canada is free, and freedom is its nationality. And so it is today. And so let us then set out to protect the freedom of all Canadians and to stand for the values of freedom all around the world. Let us support our Jewish and Muslim friends here in this country as they watch with horror and with sadness at what is happening to loved ones on the other side of the world. They too are Canadians. They are our people. We must stand with them now and always, because after all, we are Canadians. Thank you.
Wow, very moving. So a few points over here that I think are important. No negotiation with Hamas. Absolutely. And a little perturbed of the negotiations for the hostages, although we need to get the hostages back. Absolutely. But I think the way things are going, it's weakening the hand of Israel with the negotiations. How to deal with that? Well, is to stay strong, that we can negotiate concerning the hostages, but we can't negotiate the end of the war, because the end of the war will only be when Hamas is completely defeated, or defeated sufficiently that they will not be able to rear their horrific, ugly head. So that's very important. Yes, and even Obama, he didn't negotiate with evil. He understands that. So the rest of the world needs to understand that we can't negotiate in a way that will allow the evil to exist. Second point is about the Abraham Accords. It's true. They recognized that they needed to upset the apple cart. Well, what needs to happen is that the Abraham Accords need to move forward. And I hope this is something that the Trump administration is going to work very fiercely on, as he did in his first mandate. But here's the opportunity for the second mandate, that this needs to be the core of what he does. Because as much as you defeat evil, what we really need is an alliance with decent, at least half-decent countries. We need an alliance with those who are not extremists. That needs to be expanded. And finally, what Sir Wilfrid Laurier said about the nationality of Canadians. There's many different nationalities. There are many different types of people, beliefs, and whatnot. And he says, ours is free, for freedom. That's our nationality. So I'd like to add something to that. First of all, it's a beautiful notion. But freedom is ultimately not freedom that I could do as I please. That's not true freedom. True freedom is free to be who you really are. We all have a God-given potential. We all have a purpose that God put us on this earth for. And freedom is to be able to choose to live by the potential that God has given you, the purpose that he's given you, and therefore live not merely a human life of pettiness, smallness, of just, seeking more pleasure, more freedom to have more comfort and pleasure. That's not a purpose. Freedom to seek pleasure and comfort is not purpose. The choice in life, and what we really have freedom is, am I going to live a life that I'm free to choose that will be without purpose, but will be pleasurable, that will be comfortable? Or do I pursue, because of the freedom that I have, to live a life that is truly meaningful, a life of goodness and kindness, of where giving is more than and better than taking, where being charitable is something that's looked up to, where greed is something looked down at, where we are able to live a life that, when we can say by what will be said after we leave this world, by a eulogy, that this person, me and you, made a difference in people's lives for good. Just didn't play another game of golf or another game of racquetball and was good at it, or was a great businessman and made lots of money. No, but was a great businessman and gave lots of charity. And was a great sportsman that he coached the team of youngsters and helped mold their character through coaching them through sports. That's the kind of life that we are free ultimately to choose. If you like what I just shared with you, join me daily for Tanya teachings that brings out so much of this empowerment that we can live a life that's really meaningful, high-minded, not petty and small, that we make a greater impact in the world. Daily, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a live class with many people across the globe on many platforms, and youtube.com/Tanya Rabbi. Join me Mondays through Fridays, 9:30 a.m., Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we can learn together and grow together, make an impact together, and change the world for good.